Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time we're talking episode 23, the grand season finale of season 2 of Arrow, called Unthinkable. And I gotta say, I thought this was a really great episode. There was just so much craziness going on. So much stuff gets set up for season 3, and it is intensely action-packed. The craziness is just absolutely off the charts, and I love it. So let's just kind of get right into things. And let's start with our flashbacks, and then we'll go into our characters and stuff. So anyway, this flashback this time around leads us to see the end of the Amazo, and I like how when we do go back to the island at the end of the episode, we can even see the wreckage still there several years later, which I thought was really a nice touch, even if conveniently placed. But anyway, so we get to see our big throwdown between Oliver and Slade, and we see how Slade loses his eye, although it doesn't really exactly explain what was going on with that mask being on that pole on the beach. I mean, I guess Oliver put that up as a screw you to Slade's spirit or something like that. Well, or whatever. We also see, of course, how Oliver and Sara once again became separated. So yeah, seeing Sara die like that twice, yeah, no wonder Oliver really did not want to talk about anything involving what happened to Sara. And of course, the big fight between Oliver and Slade is pretty darn crazy and intense. And Oliver makes that fateful choice to try and kill Slade, and in his mind he thought he succeeded, rather than trying to cure him. But I like how at the end, even though Oliver, you can quite easily make the case, and this episode is very big in this case, that Oliver made the wrong choice then, it's also interesting to note that at the end of it, Slade says, do you think the Mirakuru made me hate you, or do you think I hate you because of the Mirakuru? And you have to think, even if Oliver had injected him with the Mirakuru, it really wouldn't have changed that. Slade would still have hated Oliver. It's just a lot less likely that he would have made it out of that ship alive, so I guess that probably would have solved that problem. But in any case, it was a fateful choice. And of course that has enormous ramifications on what happens all this season. So with that in mind, let's just kind of move into the present and just start talking about the smaller characters, and then work our way up. Not a huge amount to say about what happened with Isabel. Just it was pretty hilarious to just watch her just be there taunting Oliver. And it's like, yeah, even if you kill me, you've lost everything. And then Nyssa just frickin' breaks her neck. I mean, yikes. I mean, she did make a good point that, Oliver does, even if Isabel dies, Oliver doesn't automatically get his company back. I mean, exactly where the company is in this situation is up in the air, but, we've got bigger fish to fry at the moment, right? But that'll definitely be something they'll be dealing with in Season 3. Let me see. Yeah, let's kind of talk about Nyssa since I brought her up. Again, not a huge amount to say about what's going on with her. She's still very much, blah blah blah, daughter of the demon and all this other stuff. Although that little moment between her and Felicity, where Felicity introduces herself, that was cute. And I like how even Nyssa seemed mildly amused by Felicity there. And even her grudging respect for Officer Lance, where she sees that, Quentin might be very far out of the League of Assassins League, but the man has guts. And he did even save Nyssa from what could have potentially been either her getting seriously hurt or maybe even killed. So it is kind of cool to know that Quentin has earned Nyssa's respect. And it is pretty easy to understand that, easy to believe, I should say, that her saying that, look, I'm going to make sure nothing on this world brings harm to Sara. Which I suppose is all well and good. Now, I don't think that Quentin is going to die from his injuries. I think this was just a little hey, we got to do something dramatic here, so let's just have it be that. Which, frankly, I think is kind of cheap, but whatever. But yeah, there's I've heard nothing about Paul Blackthorne not being back next season, so pretty safe to say whatever's going on there, Quentin will probably pull through and be in a very interesting position to sort of work with Oliver next season. He is very much heading in the direction of being the Commissioner Gordon of this series, which is all well and good because it is sort of established in the DC universe that many superheroes do have a working relationship with law enforcement. Now, not all of them, like Batman, for example, does not. But on the other hand, characters like Superman, I actually remember reading a comic where it mentioned that Superman has actually been given some sort of special deputy status by the mayor and the police department in Metropolis. So technically, Superman can legally arrest people. I mean, granted, he is established to have actually been an American citizen and thus is capable of enacting citizens' arrest and all that other stuff. But anyway, it is sort of taking a first step in the direction of superheroes cooperating with the authorities. So, not a whole lot else to say about that. Also, definitely kind of cool to see Laurel doing a little bit more of the action thing. That was definitely great. And if it is, as the producers have said, her ultimate destiny in some way to be the Canary, then again, this is another little step in the right direction. Which, frankly, I think is pretty seriously due, simply because Laurel, as any kind of really person who can really take care of herself physically, hasn't really been touched on since season 1. Now, the whole thing with Sara giving Laurel her jacket, again, another nod that Laurel will probably does have the destiny of ultimately becoming Black Canary. But seeing as how Sara survived this season and Laurel has a long, long way to go before she's ready to take up the mantle in any way, shape, or form, I think it's going to be, like I've mentioned in some of my previous videos, where Laurel is going to maybe be more of a bit of a decoy should Sara ever need to be seen someplace else when the Canary's out doing her thing. And it wouldn't surprise me if Sara popped back up again to help give Laurel more formal training. I mean, being trained by a top-notch employee, shall we say, of the League of Assassins, yeah, that's the sort of thing that could seriously toughen Laurel up PDQ. Delicious tea. But again, I don't really think we're going to be seeing any Laurel going too strongly in that direction anytime soon. Now that Kate Spencer is dead, I had the feeling they're also going to be pushing her to kind of follow in her dad's footsteps and be a vigilante-friendly person in a position of power. Now, what really bothers me here in terms of the Lances is what's going on with Sara. Like, okay, her making the deal with the League of Assassins to go back, and then going back with it. Like Quentin and Laurel go over and see her off, and they're like hugging, and everybody's smiling and happy. And they're kind of forgetting, it seems to me, like Sara is going back to join an organization of murderers. I mean, it's called the League of Assassins. Assassins kill people for money. And they're treating Sara like Sara's going off to art camp for the summer. Like, is anybody not concerned that Sara was probably going to be sent out to murder innocent people once again? I mean, what are they going to do? Oh, Sara, hey, it's me, Nissa. Look, I've got this dictator in Africa who needs off, and you up for that? No? Well, okay, we've got this, millionaire philanthropist who likes to build orphanages. How about him? Okay, the dictator in Africa? Great, I'll pencil you in for that. But what the hell? Okay, again, another thing to deal with in Season 3, but seriously. Yeah. Anyway, speaking of the League of Assassins, we should also talk about League of Assassins ex-member, like Sara, the one and only Malcolm Merlyn. Now, I was surprised this episode that nobody ever found out, apart from Thea. Well, she found out last episode, that Malcolm was alive. I was really kind of thinking that Malcolm might jump in there to try and help Oliver save Starling City. But in retrospect, why would he? All he really cares about is Thea, and he is in that position where, as long as she's safe, and he's right there, so he's not going to go like, oh, I guess I should go help your brother or something. So yeah. And what's great about this is nobody knows about this. Sara doesn't know. Oliver doesn't know. Nobody knows that Malcolm is still alive. And this is, of course, going to be a massive gut punch to everybody when he does finally show his head in Season 3. And it has been confirmed that John Barrowman has been bumped up to regular for Season 3. In fact, I was reading an interview with him about his role on Arrow, where he basically said he'd been told by the producers that he was going to be a stable villain. Not stable as in balance, but like as in a place where they keep horses. So basically, in comic books, he's basically going to be a member of Oliver's Rogues Gallery. He's going to be somebody that who pops up from time to time to cause trouble for Oliver, but who is pretty unlikely to be killed off anytime soon, or at least not until the end of Season 3. Now, I've also heard people online talking about whether or not about Malcolm being the big bad of Season 3. And the problem with that is we've seen Malcolm as the big bad of Season 1. And having him do that, it just doesn't really seem too terribly exciting, because we know that Oliver can beat Malcolm. Now, if Malcolm is sort of like brother blood next time around, not in a minion position in any way, shape, or form, but simply a secondary threat. And one has to look at the whole situation with Malcolm and wonder, well, where did he get his money from? I mean, he does have limo and bodyguards. That sort of thing doesn't come cheap. And it was said earlier this season that the government seized Malcolm's assets when the word got out of what he'd been doing. Now, I guess you could always say that Malcolm was smart enough to have squirreled some money away for a rainy day in a place where the government couldn't get to it. But there's another possibility, is that he's found somebody else to work with. He's certainly not going back to the League of Assassins. They still want him dead. However, let us not forget that Hive was heavily teased several times this season. So Hive is a real possibility as the big bad for Season 3. And you got to think that maybe if they're going to continue to have the League of Assassins pop up quite a bit, then the logical next step at this point is to bring in Ra's al Ghul. And with Sara going back to the League of Assassins, you have to think that might be a real possibility. Now, ultimately, though, Malcolm is really one of the big victors this time around. He got what he wanted, and that's Thea going with him. And I love how I was wrong that Thea really did try and kill him. And it's great that Malcolm is even flat out proud of this. It's like she has that killer instinct that he has, that Tommy did not. And let's keep in mind that Thea has even said herself that she has wicked aim. I mean, that's a wonderfully subtle nod to what we've ultimately discovered about her being Malcolm's daughter. And basically in that note she says leaves for Roy that she's going off with Malcolm to become a stronger person, to become someone who can't be hurt and manipulated and used and lied to by other people anymore. Now, this is a pretty heavy indication that she's probably going to go down the path of becoming Artemis. So it wouldn't really surprise me that if sometime during Season 3 we find father and daughter back in town in Starling City in contact with the Arrow and his new protege. Of course, Malcolm knows perfectly well who the vigilante is, but he's not probably going to be much inclined to share that with Thea, which could ultimately be his undoing. But still, Thea versus Oliver and Roy, ho ho ho, talk about pure gold. And of course, eventually, she is bound to find out the truth about everything. I mean, Season 3, that's pretty much a guarantee. That really would be a logical step in her following down Artemis's path, to particularly the Young Justice show, where her father was the villain sportsmaster, and ultimately turning away from that. And if she does show up, it's pretty safe to say that she'd probably be wearing an outfit inspired by Malcolm. If she were to switch over to a more greenish outfit like the one that Oliver wears, and rather similar to what Artemis wore on Young Justice, that would be a really nice way of saying that she has chosen Oliver as her family, as the one that she really considers closest to her. Now, in the comics, her counterpart Mia Durden, she actually wore the yellow and red outfit that was a riff on the traditional Speedy costume. So I guess you could say that maybe Thea might go for a yellow and red kind of outfit as a bit of a nod to Roy, but bright yellow doesn't really seem like a wise choice for these sort of activities. So a darker version in terms of with a darker green palette kind of costume, like somewhat inspired by what Artemis wore on Young Justice, I could really see that as being what Thea ultimately ends up running around in by the end of season 3. So speaking of Roy, not a huge amount to say about him. Roy does finally get his mask, and it's pretty cool. But of course, nothing can go smoothly for Roy, and again, it's really him, of all people, that's lying to her that drives Thea away. And of course, Roy, when he sees the note and the arrows, puts it all together. And of course, this must just absolutely rip the guy's heart out. And this is really Roy getting a dose of one of the really hard realities of being a superhero, is that you constantly have to lie to people that you love. And this is the eternal question for many of superhero is, can you have intimacy without honesty? And again, just as it has many a hero before him, this all just completely blows up in Roy's face. But to his credit, Roy puts that aside. He puts aside this emotional pain and torment that he's going through because of losing Thea again, and goes out there and helps save the day. And it looks like he's in a position where he's really finally going to listen to Oliver. Now, granted, to be completely fair to Roy, Oliver has so far done a pretty crap job of being a mentor. And I think Felicity's lying to Roy about how, he didn't really do anything bad when, Roy murdered a policeman. Yeah. Now, it's a little unclear in my mind exactly whether or not Roy remembers that, but you can bet that's probably going to be something that comes to haunt Roy in season 3, and definitely is going to cause some serious conflict for is potentially could lead Team Arrow into conflict with both Quentin and Laurel, because somebody's got to answer for that cop's death. Now, granted, Roy was out of his mind on evil super drugs at the time, but still, you don't stab somebody in the heart with an arrow and get away with it. I mean, unless you're Oliver, but he's the hero of the show, so he gets to get away with stuff like that. Oh yeah, one thing that before I forget, earlier I mentioned that I'd heard what sounded like them mentioning a street named Rock Avenue, and I kind of wonder if this might have been a nod to the character of Sgt Rock. Well, if you pay careful attention to this during all the military jibber jabber, they mention Easy Company. Well, Easy Company was the name of Sgt Rock's unit in the comics. So yeah, Arrow has given not one, but 2 shout-outs to Sgt Rock. So I think it's fairly safe to say that some version of the character did indeed exist in the Arrow universe back during the Second World War. So again, that's just kind of cool. It's one of those things that they don't have to give a shout-out to this sort of thing, but Sgt Rock has had his fans for a very long time. And still, if you go and actually read some of the more modern stories with him, I mean, it's really, really good World War II fiction. Anyway, so let's move on to just glancing over my notes here. Yeah. Speaking of stuff, remember last time around I brought up how they're apparently planning to destroy Starling City with only 1 drone? I'm pretty sure at this point I said this episode I heard Oliver say drones. But again, still, we only see the 1 drone. So unless there was like a hydrogen bomb on that thing, what the hell? And again, how in the world was destroying this entire city going to be explained to people? You cannot blow up 500,000 people in and a major American city without somebody going, "What the hell, government?" But again, we'll talk about Amanda Waller a bit more in a bit. Not a huge amount to say about what was going on with Diggle this episode, although I was shocked as everybody else when it turned out that Lila is pregnant. Now, Lila's counterpart in the comics, Harbinger, is just so radically different that she's really just Lila, Mike, Lila, whatever in name only. So basically, I got nothing on this particular development. Although it was certainly good to see Dig, standing up to Waller, again showing his complicated relationship with Deadshot, and again setting up some really, really big stuff. It's interesting that Oliver is a father. Diggle is going to be a father. Felicity's father has been mentioned. And it's been said that the list from Oliver's father from Season 1 is going to pop back up as a plot element in Season 3. So it looks like Sins of the Father is going to be a huge, huge thing in Season 3. And oh yeah, there's just also another father running around by the name of Malcolm Merlyn. Ooh, gonna be good, folks. Gonna be good. Let me see. So I guess we should, of course, talk about Felicity and what's going on with her. And again, Felicity gets to go out there and give another really great speech. The one about how Oliver choosing to be a killer in the past is what led to this situation, and now he has to choose to be a hero. And I really, really like this, that Felicity is very much the heart and conscience of the team. She's the one that kind of keeps everybody on the straight and narrow path and provides that moral clarity that is really needed for sort of the DC style superhero. And in this more gray and murky interpretation of these characters, that's something that is going to be very difficult for them to come to on their own. Now, of course, we get to see Oliver deliver a fantastic speech at the end of this episode along those lines, where he thanks Slade for helping make him a hero. You thank the man who murdered your mother, who brought all this destruction and misery to your home and your city. But even then, Oliver chose to look at the good that Slade had done. I mean, that's the real hallmark of a hero. But getting back to Felicity for a moment, when that whole fake air quotes confession of love, from what I've heard, Twitter went just absolutely berserk. I mean, I know my jaw hit the floor, and I was like, oh my god, I never in a million years thought they were going to say that. And of course it all turns out to be a fake out, but just how much was anybody acting there? Well, I mean, we've been really hit hard with the teasing moments here, so I think this is really just more of a case of Oliver's like, you know what? Trying for a relationship now would be really stupid, especially since just not that long ago I was having sex with Sarah. So yeah, but I'm sorry, I just love these moments where the people behind the show are obviously just like to the fandom out there. It just makes me laugh. But anyway, Oliver. So, as I said, Oliver really does, thanks to Felicity, really understand much more clearly how to be the kind of hero that Tommy would have wanted him to be. How not to be the person that Tommy rejected. To be the kind of man that can honor Tommy's memory. To be the kind of hero that his city really needs. I mean, I love it how he just literally makes no bones about how there's going to be no killing, straight to the face of the League of Assassins. And he pulls it off. And of course he pulls off these brilliant gambits with the way he ultimately saves the day. And what's really awesome about this is that at the end of the day, if you really look at it, just getting back to her for a moment, it's Felicity. Felicity Smoke, MIT class of '09, who managed to defeat both Ravager and Deathstroke. I mean, she's nailed Isabel with that van. She's the one who depowers Slade. Felicity Smoke, ladies and gentlemen. Not a lady to be underestimated. But yeah. So, and what I really liked about all this is just that moment, that feeling of real and genuine heroism, where the characters are going out there and doing what is right. They are making the harder choice. And in this case, it's a choice to spare all the Mirakuru soldiers, to spare Slade. And if you're familiar with Doctor Who, you know one of the guys who played Doctor Who was this guy named Colin Baker. And I was watching this interview with him one time when he was talking about the Doctor's character, and he says this great thing where the thing about the Doctor is that he makes the choice that to do what is right, and that doing what is always pretty, and it isn't always popular, and it isn't always easy, but it's what's right, and that's why it matters. And again, going back to that is exactly what Oliver does. Now you can kind of make a case, and not an unreasonable one, that it really would be better for everyone if they just killed the Mirakuru soldiers, if they just killed Slade. But again, just killing people is the easy choice. Choosing to show mercy, even to those who would not show mercy to you. Well, many of philosophy and many of religion would hold that up as the more virtuous path. And if all Oliver was just a guy who went around and killed anybody that he just deemed a bad guy, well then he'd be the Punisher. And while the Punisher is actually one of my favorite comic book characters, I love to read the Punisher, he's an anti-hero. He is someone who does very questionable things that ultimately are probably a net gain of good in the universe, but he himself is not really what one could in any way, shape, or form dub a virtuous man. I mean, Frank Castle is a guy who basically has on multiple occasions said, "I know I'm going to hell." Oliver is somebody who is trying to walk that higher path, to make the harder choices, the more compassionate choices. Now, he's not always going to be able to do that. We saw that this season when he had to kill Count Vertigo in order to save Felicity. There, Oliver did have no choice. And he didn't hesitate, but he was never happy about it. He didn't take any pleasure in it. And the idea that he might have to just simply go back to being a killer again, it weighed heavily on his soul. And it should. Taking the life of other people, even people who are bad, is not something that anyone should do casually. And again, this is really that weight, that pressure, the price that comes with making that better choice. That's what really makes heroes. And I really have always liked the DC heroes in that they're very, very strict about the whole no killing thing. If you really pay closer attention to the Marvel heroes, they're a little bit more ambiguous about this. I mean, I'm not talking about just the Punisher. I mean, it's made explicitly clear that during World War II, Captain America did indeed kill people. He has from time to time, even in the modern '9, taken lives. Not only when he had no other choice, but he is a soldier. He will do that if he has to. And then there are plenty of other characters like Nick Fury and Black Widow and Thor and Wolverine, of course, who have indeed killed people. And hell, Wolverine's killed God only knows how many people. But he's still a hero. But the DC heroes have always had a much, much more firm stance on, no, we don't kill people for anything. Now, again, to be completely fair, this rule has been somewhat relaxed in recent years, particularly over in Green Lantern, where for a long time the rule was Green Lantern power rings would not allow lanterns to kill. Now that was actually revised so that they did have the power to use lethal force. So the lanterns like Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner and John Stewart, and pretty sure Kyle Rayner too, have indeed killed people. But again, they're basically soldiers in that case fighting in a war where there really isn't another option. But while the line may have gotten blurred a little bit over the years, it still does remain that DC heroes do have that firmer stance against taking the lives of others. And that, as I said, is one of the reasons that I really do admire the DC heroes. Now, please don't interpret this as me saying that I like the DC heroes better than the Marvel heroes. I don't. I don't like any group better than the other. I really do enjoy DC and Marvel both equally, because they're both great universes filled with great characters, both heroes and villains and civilians, and all kinds of cool ideas, and are massively, massively fun. And what I like about comics in general, especially superhero comics, is that they do go out there and they do try to present that lesson of, it's not always easy, but this is what heroes do. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to falter. They're going to make the wrong choices. But they're going to go out there and they're going to try to do what's right. And that's true for Oliver. That's true for Spider-Man. It's true for Batman or Superman or any other hero you can name. And I really do like how this show is not afraid to tap into that spirit of idealism. And especially in this day and age, a time when idealism is a thing that's very easy to mock. But I think that idealism is really one of the things that makes superhero comics great. And while it does certainly come from a more serious, a more gritty place, Arrow is getting into that direction where they're not afraid to embrace some of that idealism. And not just Oliver, but, as I said, Felicity as well. She's the real shining light of that idealism on the show. But I've kind of rambled a little bit off topic here. Anyway, guys, this was a great season finale. I am so excited for what's going to be happening next season. It's going to be amazing. So I will see you guys there. Until next time, take care and have a good one.